possibly the beginning of a world war is already around the corner.
World is in a turmoil, but there are at least 115 other conflict zones which are active at the moment, sir.
Fundamentally, I feel, Shivam, somewhere we as a race have gone grossly wrong.
2047 Viksit Bharat, sir.
Yeah.
Do you think the PM's vision can be a reality?
Honorable Prime Minister's vision, I think, an outstanding idea.
It's an idea.
Atmanirbharta would imply a very strong domestic manufacturing base.
We do about 2% of the GDP for military. Do you think that is enough?
I feel the first and foremost question we ask is, are we in a position to spend the 2%?
There's a lot of threat for us as well in India. We have a security challenges coming from China and Pakistan.
How can we be intrinsically powerful and strong if we have strong armed forces? So I think the first and the foremost requirement is to have a strong armed forces.
Do we have a strong armed forces, sir?
One of the postulates of Chanakya says, your immediate neighbor would be your natural enemy.
And Chanakya was a kingmaker. Who would you say is a kingmaker in today's time, sir? Today, we have the privilege of hosting General A.K. Singh, a distinguished military leader and a strategic thinker, for an insightful discussion that transcends conventional boundaries. In this episode, we explored the conflicts shaping the world today and the lessons spirituality offers in navigating such turbulent times. We also talk about India's national security threats and the critical changes required to strengthen our defense in a rapidly evolving geopolitical landscape. We deep dive into India's strategic culture, clarifying misconceptions and understanding its unique approach to global challenges. And finally, drawing wisdom from our ancient knowledge, particularly Kautilya's Arthashastra, to connect timeless principles to modern-day strategy and governance. General A.K. Singh bridges a wealth of experience, blending military insights with philosophical depth to help us understand how India's rich cultural heritage can inform its strategic vision and strengthen its global standings. This conversation is a rare confluence of strategy, spirituality, and history, and I'm confident that it will leave you with a new perspective on India's place in the world. So without further ado, let's get started. Before we dive into today's conversation, I want to take a quick moment and ask for a favor. We noticed that 93% of you who watch our content regularly aren't subscribed yet. My promise to you is simple. If you hit that subscribe button, we'll keep working hard to bring thought-provoking conversations, incredible guests, and the topics you really care about the most. It is practically free for you, but it makes a huge difference for us, helping us grow, reach more people, and bring even better content your way. Thank you for supporting. It means the world to us. Now let's get back to the video. General A.K. Singh, always a pleasure to have a conversation with you. Welcome to Darfur Publisher. In fact, I'm at your house right now. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Shivam. I think it's always a pleasure to interact with you too. And like you said, I think there's a good setting in the lawn of your own place, the backdrop of Shivaliks. And mind you, the temperature in Dehradun has gone down to 5 degrees today. And just I think day before night, it snowed in Mussoorie.
It did?
Yes. So it's cold, but the best part of Dehradun is the sun.
The sun.
The days would be sunny and warm.
The sky is blue, pitch blue.
Absolutely blue.
Right.
Perfect setting.
So today's conversation is going to be a mix of different subjects, mainly on India's strategic culture and its thought. But before that, I want to ask you about your perspective on the reality of world today, sir. We've been seeing conflicts around the world. We talk about Russia, Ukraine, we talk about Israel, Palestine. Now there's one in Syria as well. Iran's been involved. So world is in a turmoil. And these are the conflicts that I see through media. But there are at least 115 other conflict zones which are active at the moment, sir. 2024. What are your thoughts on that, sir, first?
I think it's absolutely pretty disturbing because, it was said that the world is moving towards peace. And after the First World War, Second World War, organizations were created. And it was primarily to usher in peace. But the situation today, the entire geopolitics is in a state of flux. And like you said, 115 conflicts all around the world. There is so much of destruction, there is so much of death. Fundamentally, I feel, Shivam, somewhere we as a race have gone wrong, grossly wrong, grossly wrong. And it doesn't augur very well, because these conflicts have the potential of leading into a world war. In fact, I would not be off in saying that possibly the beginning of a world war is already around the corner, is already around the corner. So definitely it's an alarming situation. And that is where you said the podcast is on strategic culture.
Mhm.
And that is where I think exactly you asked a very good question. That's where we come to the strategic culture and our strategic culture. Because what was the dominant strategic culture? It was the Western strategic culture, which was very dominant strategic culture. So, to some extent, and to be fair to everybody and everyone, I think if we are in a situation, we have to introspect somewhere that dominant culture which was prevalent, has there been an inadequacy in that dominant strategic culture? Because that was of West. This is the strategic culture which is. And if you see the culture per se, we'll come to the strategic culture a little later. What is that culture? That culture is consumerism. That culture promotes profit. And because of the profit, if the profit becomes the motive, then everything else is secondary. So you have hospitals, but they are not meant to ensure your good health. It's for a profit. You are being given food. Is it to ensure your good health? It's for the profit. There are conflicts. Is it to ensure peace? I have always said that, like, just digressing it a little, Shiva. I said that armies are meant, we are an instrument of state. Armies are instrument, armed forces are instrument of state. But we are an instrument of state not to wage war. We are an instrument of state to establish peace.
Mm.
But there are times when to establish peace, you have to take recourse to war. And that is why, that is what is the role of the armed forces.
Right.
So, if there is so much of war and so much of conflict that is taking place, I think it's time to introspect as a race where we have gone wrong. And I think possibly the clock is ticking, and very quickly we need to introspect and take mid course correction.
So another problem that comes with this is that war has become a new normal. People don't feel, troubled by listening about war anymore. And on the same hand, of course, deep subconsciously, they are feeling off as well. They see the people dying. So what does spirituality teach you in this case, sir?
I
What
think
should you do?
this is
For an individual level, I'm not talking in a community or society. At an individual level, what should an individual do in these situations?
I think it's a very dangerous trend when we say that war has become normal. I think war has become normal for us who are sitting in our drawing room and taking a ringside view. But definitely, war is not normal for people who are in the conflict zone. You ask what's happening in Afghanistan, in Syria, in Israel,
Palestine.
in Palestine, in Africa, all the places where conflict is taking place. Please go there and ask if war is normal. I don't think war is normal. War is normal for people who are sitting in our drawing room, for us sitting here in the lawn,
And commenting.
having a ringside view and commenting on it. I don't think war is normal. It will be very dangerous to say that war is normal. It's not normal. I think we have to take everything, in our part to make sure that war, it's not, our own prime minister has come on the record to say this is not an era of war.
True. He
I
visited.
think, and you talked about spirituality. In essentially, spirituality is very personal, and spirituality is to resolve the conflict within oneself.
within you. Yeah.
If I am able to resolve conflict within oneself, within me, I'm absolutely certain, Shivam, I will be able to resolve conflict. So if the world leaders, hypothetically, if I say if the world leaders are spiritual, deeply spiritual, that means they have resolved the conflict here. If they have resolved the conflict here, I think the world would be free of conflict. Spirituality definitely,
Hmm.
that's a different subject altogether,
Right.
but
Sir,
spirituality definitely paves the way, shows the way
mhm.
for ushering in peace and tranquility.
For an individual who are in a safe zone like us at the moment,
Yeah.
who are just commenting on the wars around us, what can we do at our level in order to just help the people who are suffering?
I think at an individual level, at a society level, whatever help we can give, the medicines are required, the clothes are required. There is so much of thing that is required. I think at personal level, whatever we can do, as an individual, as a society, as a country, we ought to do. That is one. And second is, I think, to create an awareness and to create a movement. After all, leaders, sort of when they wage war, the first and foremost requirement is the population with them. A situation is created where the population says, okay, yes, it's okay to go for a war. I think it's time now for us to create awareness that war is not the solution.
Hmm.
It is never the solution. Yes, there are times when you have to wage war, but war is not the solution. Okay, before war, there are a lot of, I think, this awareness has to come in the population at large, in every citizen, that war is not the answer. And if this awareness comes in everybody, I'm absolutely certain, Shivam, that these leaders at the helm of affairs will think at least 10 times or 100 times before they venture into initiating a conflict or a war.
So, from the individual level, let's switch to the national level, sir. There's a lot of threat for us as well in India. We have a security challenges coming from China and Pakistan,
Yeah.
and we could, similar situation can happen here as well. How do we safeguard ourselves? What is the base route? I think it is obviously strategic culture is the base of it, but if you were to say something about our national security threats, what would you say, sir?
I think it's a very good question that you have asked. When you have 115 conflicts all around in the globe, India today is like a oasis of peace, where we are enjoying a relative sense of peace amid these 115 conflicts. But I think, to my mind, uh, it is on the surface that we have peace, but we have big security challenges.
Mhm.
We have our borders, which are yet not completely delineated, demarcated, settled. Uh, so there is a lot of, and we have China on our northern front. We have Pakistan on the western front. Uh, Both inimical neighbors. While we are trying whatever is in our power to make sure that the relations do improve, but there is a situation. Apart from this situation, there is an internal situation. There are vociferous tendencies within our country. Uh, there are divisions based on caste, based on creed, based on region. Uh, I think both we have huge challenges, both internally and externally. And at this point of a time, what we need is a very astute leadership, a statesman like leadership, you know, and a very clear plan for next at least about a decade to 2 decades to make sure that we continue to enjoy this relative peace. What can we do? I think first and foremost, uh, there is a beautiful couplet of Ramdhare Singh Dinkar, Shama Shobhati Usi Bhujang ko जिसके पास गरल हो उसका क्या जो दंतहीन विषरहित विनीत सरल हो. We can only establish peace if we are intrinsically powerful, intrinsically strong. How can we be intrinsically powerful and strong? If we have strong armed forces. So I think the first and the foremost requirement is to have a strong armed forces.
Do we have a strong armed forces, sir? Before you go ahead.
I would say yes. I would say yes at this point of a time, but we have challenges. We have challenges. I think organizationally we have to transform. We still have organizations and we still have structures which have stood the test of time. But you see how the technology is changing the very character, not the nature of the war remains the same, but the character of the war definitely changes. So the technology is definitely changing the character of war. And if the character of war is changing, the organization also has to adapt itself to the changing character.
Right.
So when we talk of the theaters, I
Hmm.
think absolutely the step in the right direction.
Okay. That was my question
When
next.
we talk of integration, joint planning, joint execution, absolutely a step in the right direction. Joint logistics, joint logistics is something that we are not talking very often, but I feel the most important thing. It is a prerequisite before we get into, that complete jointness. So organization structure need to change. We need to become nimble footed. We have to invest in the technology which are on the horizon. So the quantum, the artificial technology, the drone, the big data, all this has to come in, not only just come in, but has to transform into something which is absolutely concrete, usable, which you can use in a conflict. As of now, it is conceptually things are being talked and a little bit of it is flowing. I
Hmm.
think it has to flow in a very big manner. Atmanirbharta.
Hmm.
If we have to ensure that we have strong armed forces and a strong nation, Atmanirbharta is extremely important. Without Atmanirbharta, I don't think any country can aspire and can become a very strong nation. I think a step absolutely in the right direction. But while there is a lot of thing which is going on, definitely there is a lot that needs to be done. I think we don't even have a moment to waste, let alone a day or a year, not even a moment to waste. I think there are big changes as far as the policy is concerned, as far as the procedures are concerned, as far as the procurements are concerned, as far as the handholding is concerned, as far as giving that kind of a right environment to the startups, to the private sector, strengthening the public sector. I think there is a whole lot of thing that needs to be done. So this all is needed to make sure that we have a very strong
Armed
armed
forces.
forces,
Mhm.
and not to forget the internal issues.
Right.
I think somewhere down the line, all of us have to think. I think nothing should be done which creates rifts, which creates divisions. I think it's time to be together as one homogeneous entity. And I think India has always stood as a pluralistic society.
Hmm.
This has been our strength, this has been our culture. Pluralism is our culture, syncretic culture. So this is what has been our strength.
Hmm.
So I don't think anything has changed.
Mhm.
So I very strongly feel it's a very important, sensitive time for us to have and to stand united within the country.
True. So you said to safeguard ourselves, we need a strong armed forces, strong military, and we are pretty much strong right now, but we need to work on jointness, integration, theaterization, and focus on Atmanirbharta.
I said we are strong, but challenges. We have challenges. We
Hmm.
have challenges
Hmm.
because you have to be, you have to keep pace, with the changing times.
True. The warfare is changing.
Yeah.
So you mentioned Atmanirbharta as well, but there is a lot of misconceptions about Atmanirbharta. What according to you is Atmanirbharta, sir?
I think
Is it 100% reliance, or is it major technology shift, or that you need to produce everything in house? What should be an ideal Atmanirbharta?
I think you again touched a very pertinent question, Shivam, and I think most of the people do not understand the contours of Atmanirbharta. When I say Atmanirbharta, it is largely domestic manufacturing. Atmanirbharta would imply a very strong domestic manufacturing base. Do we have that base? What is it that we need to do as far as the strong manufacturing base is concerned? We need to have that we have critical indigenous technologies,
Critical, yes.
most important. Okay? It is not necessarily, not or necessary that everything, every pin has to be produced in India. It's a structure today, because after all, when you produce a thing, it has to be competitively priced. Because when we produce a thing, we not only our defense manufacturing will not cater only for us. but will also cater for exports. And if it caters for exports also, because for it to thrive, it is not just the domestic consumption, but it should be able to meet the international standards also. If that has to happen, the competitive pricing is important. Competitive pricing comes when you find out where is the best and in the minimum cost. So we don't necessarily, but
And availability also.
and availability also. But also at the same time, we must have the capacity that in a war, can we sort of scale up our production. So if we have to scale up our production and maybe the supply and a robust supply line, that supply chain is extremely important. So while you are connected, but can you quickly transform the supply chain that domestically also you are in
Got
a
it.
position to sort of, I think these are very, very important things.
Got it. So briefly, just because you mentioned before, you said it is important for all the three forces to act in accordance.
Yeah.
What about the civil society, sir? How important are they in a war-like situation?
No, extremely important. The civil society is extremely important. Today, for example, manufacturing, it is the civilian industry which has to play ball, which has to come up. So it's extremely important. If you see 1971 war, I think not much has been talked about the support which the population gave, which in the West Bengal and in the northeastern state, phenomenal amount of support. I think a strong nation which is backing the armed forces, which has complete faith in the armed forces, which are homogeneous, and are there to help out. I think that is absolutely a given. It's a great boost to the strength of armed forces.
How can we enhance the abilities of the civil society, sir?
I think the sense of discipline has to come in. A sense of nation, that you belong to a country, nationalism, patriotic fervor, and a sense of my contribution towards nation building. I think if every citizen, we are a land of 1.4 billion people. Imagine the 1.4 billion people, if every citizen contributes, every citizen is disciplined, every citizen understands what is his contribution towards nation building, I think this country would be a marvel. This country overnight will become the strongest country if that happens.
Is there any example in spirituality wherein you should focus on your nation building, or should you focus on the bigger picture of humanity? So
I think the first and the foremost requirement is, they say, it all begins, charity begins at home. If charity begins at home, I think the first and the foremost definitely is I resolve myself.
yourself,
If I resolve myself, then I can contribute to
society,
to
your
the
family,
society.
your family.
I contribute to the society, I contribute to the nation building. I contribute to the nation building, that strong nation
And then
takes care of the entire world at large. I think this is how the progression
got it.
takes place.
So, as an army commander, I'm sure you had a lot of insights in our defense capabilities. Do you think, and at the moment there are a lot of talks in the strategic circles about the budget for armed forces. We do about 2% of the GDP for defense, for military. Do you think that is enough?
I feel the first and foremost question we ask is, are we in a position to spend the 2%? Today, because of certain, because of procedures, because of certain policies, I think we are not even able to spend that 2%. Our capital expenditure, of late, there has been substantial changes.
Is it?
I think I must compliment, the people, right from the MOD to the Army headquarters, to all the service headquarters, to the IDS, to the CDS, everybody. I think they need to be complimented that today, I think we are spending most of our capital budgets. Okay, but there was a time, and it's a challenge. Possibly today, also it's a challenge, that how do we spend. It's primarily, I think, our policy and procedures have to sort of be at pace. Then only, possibly we would be able to spend that 2%. But definitely, for a country the size of India, for a country which is aspiring to be a power of significance, which is aspiring to be a developed country by 2047, I think 2% definitely is not adequate. We need to hike up this. But before we hike up, we also have to make sure and we provide the kind of a ecosystem that we are able to spend the budget that is allocated to us.
Right. 2047 Viksit Bharat, sir.
Yeah.
Do you think the PM's vision can be a reality? Because I think there's a massive gap between what we are today in terms of our growth and the numbers and what he aspires to be in 2047 in the next 20 years. Do you think there's a possibility?
Honorable Prime Minister's vision is, I think, an outstanding idea. As a nation,
It's an idea.
As a nation, we have to have a benchmark. We have to have an aim. So, as the top leadership, the aim has been given. Okay, it's 2047. I think now it is up to all the constituents. It is up to all the government departments to make sure that this becomes a reality. While the top leadership gives the aim, but I think the country has to come together to make that vision a reality.
So you recently gave a talk at VIF, Vivekanand International Foundation, at the Vimash Talks, and you spoke about India's strategic culture.
True.
There you mentioned that Bharat is not in a sense of one particular book or multiple books or even a library. Yeah. It is a multitude of libraries.
True.
That's a very bold and beautiful statement, sir. Would you like to elaborate on it?
Yeah. So, coming back to a lot of people, the RAND Corporation did studies. One study was done in which it was mentioned that India lacks a strategic culture. I don't agree to that. There's another study of 2006 which said India has a strategic culture. I think India definitely has a very strong, very robust strategic culture, which is very old, which is very ancient. And like I said, we are not a civilization of just one book or a library. We are a civilization of libraries. Mm-hmm. There has always been free flow of thoughts in India. There has been always inquisitiveness, a sense of, that we need to ask. And nothing is taken on face value. In India, right from the olden times, we have always encouraged Shastrarth. आप सवाल पूछिए.
Curiosity.
Curiosity. आप सवाल पूछिए. We will give answers. And that is why over a period of time, today we are in a position as a country to give answers to literally all kind of situations. Right. And that is when most of that libraries have been burnt. They don't exist. But despite that, the books that we have, the remnant of the culture that we have, I would not say the culture we still have, but the book, remnant of the book, that itself is massive, colossal. Mm-hmm. I think if we can just collate all that in one database, I think it will be a phenomenal thing. So I think as we speak, this idea has come.
Right.
Let's collate it.
True.
As one database. But coming on to your question, so India definitely has a very strong, vibrant, robust strategic culture, not from now, but it has been articulated in our Vedas, where the Rajdharm, the duties and responsibilities of the king, the duties and the responsibilities of the armed forces, the duties and responsibilities of the internal administration, how the state administration, how the foreign policy needs to be conducted. I think everything has been answered. From there, the Ramayana, Mahabharata, all provide, like in Mahabharata, we have, where the Bhishma Pitamah, when he is lying on the Sharsaya, on that sage of the arrows, that's when Lord Krishna is telling Yudhishthira that you go, and Pandavas that you please go and seek the Rajdharm, he will tell you. And that's where, in the Shanti Parv of Mahabharata, Bhishma Pitamah articulates the entire strategic culture of India. Mm-hmm. He talks about the Rajdharm, about the conduct of how the administration should be conducted, how the, the domestic policies and the external policies needs to be articulated. Then we have the Manusmriti and Vishnu Smriti. Vishnu Smriti is a talk between Bhudevi and Lord Vishnu. And Lord Vishnu articulates that this is what are the roles and the responsibilities of the king, and this is what he is supposed to do. So every aspect has been articulated even in that. And then we will come to Panchtantra, Nitisar, in south, Thiruvalur. So all this, and whether it is north or south or east or west, it is the same articulation of the same strategic culture. And all of this, Chanakya, the great Chanakya, was able to concise in one book, Arthashastra.
Wow.
And I would say Arthashastra is the most important book If somebody has to read our strategic culture, please read Arthashastra. And I will just very briefly cover the important constituents of the Arthashastra. Like the first talks of the Saptanga theory. Saptanga theory is, in the modern times, you can sort of correlate it to comprehensive national power. So you have the Jizikshu, who's the king. So the present, the top leadership could be the Jizikshu, the king. Then we come down to, from there to Amatya, the ministers. So people who are helping the king. Amatyas, ministers, that's the second constituent. The third constituent is the Janpad, the territory, along with the civil populace. Then towards the last comes the Durg, the the forts, and then comes the Kosh, the treasury, and after the treasury is the Dand, the armed forces, the might of the armed forces, and then are the allies. So in together, these 7 constituents constitute the comprehensive national power. Absolutely right. This is how it has been described now.
Yeah.
So it has been described by Chanakya way back in his book Arthashastra. Then he talks about how to deal with neighbors, the foreign relations, the tenets of the foreign relation, and that's there in his Mandala theory. So in the Mandala theory, one of the postulates of Chanakya says, your immediate neighbor would be your natural enemy. How right? When you look around
We
today,
see that
world,
today as well.
it's very right, absolutely right. But it doesn't say necessarily has to be. It says natural enemy, which basically implies to a policy maker that we need to have the neighborhood first policy. We need to concentrate on our neighbor. We must make sure that they don't become our enemy, and we have a good amicable relation. Investment has to be more, because by default and naturally he could be your enemy, and that's why more focus needs to be there. Also, the second postulates talk that the neighbor's neighbor would be your natural ally. So I think we again need to draw these circles, and then in those circles, immediate circle, focus on that. Next circle, align with them. I think that's how the state policy and the foreign relations needs to be maintained. So you have a beautiful postulate in the Mandala theory. Then you also have the Shadgun theory of conduct of the foreign relations and aligning primarily with your spectrum of conflict. So you have Sandhi, that means the state of peace. Then you have Vigraha, the state of war. Then you have the Sam, and the Sam is basically a state wherein you are in a defensive posture, but you are prepared for war. So that means it's a state of neutrality. Neutrality, the war is not imminent, but you are there in a defensive posture. Then you also have Dved Bhav. Dved Bhav is overtly, I'm all right, but covertly, I'm taking certain actions to safeguard my own interest. Okay. And then you have Shanshray. That means your allies. You're taking care of, your allies and making partnership. And then last you have the Yan. And the Yan means an offensive posture. There is a threat emanating from there. So you need to take an offensive posture. You need to take everything so that you are prepared for war. Everything has been explained in the Shadgun theory.
Wow.
Then in the last, the upayas are given. How to conduct. How do you operationalize all of this? Sam, Dam, Dand, Bhed. Absolutely brilliant. So all of this has been encapsulated in the Chanakya's Arthashastra.
So you mentioned Arthashastra as an important book, especially in today's time for people to really understand what's going on around them. But my understanding of Arthashastra is the ability for a nation to create influence and power. Is that correct, sir?
I think it's not just to create influence and power. Definitely, creating influence and power is important. But I think it's the entire gamut of conduct. Basically, how to establish peace and how to live in a state of harmony. Everything is there to establish peace and live in a state of harmony. So whatever action you do, ultimate status and the ultimate aim is that.
Right.
So it gives you a very good guidance towards that.
And Chanakya was a kingmaker.
Yes.
Who would you say is a kingmaker in today's time, sir?
I think the population, the citizens, they are the kingmakers. They are the kingmakers. So you asked about the civil population. Your one question was there. It's very important for the citizens today in this country, and we are a very strong, we are a young population. It's very important, and I'm happy, Shivam, that you are a young person and you're taking so much of effort, to sort of, educate the people through these podcasts on issues of national interest, on issues of geopolitical interest, on issues of international issues that have international ramifications. I think today it's important for every citizen in this India to be well informed.
True.
Well informed. Mind you, I'm saying well informed because today is an era of perception management, info warfare,
Narratives.
cognitive warfare. So please do not take. I think if you can tell your viewers, please do not take anything and everything that you read on face value.
Yeah.
Have a 360-degree approach. Do a research of your own. Be well informed. I think that's the most important thing.
Well said, sir. So, just because I'm curious, that's why this podcast is happening. And you mentioned about India, Bharat being a very spiritual place. Like, why is India and our geographical location, and why not someone else? Us Indians are very spiritual seekers as well. We are believed to be a spiritual geographical location. Why is that case? Any particular reason?
I think I would say if you see this country and if you see the natural bounties of this country, just look around. We have all kinds of terrain. We have a beautiful weather all the year round. You can correspond with other countries where winters are very severe, mostly covered in snow. That's not the case in India. We have ample of natural resources. We have ample of human resources. And I think that's why possibly the great spiritual thought has also emerged from India. I think I would say that we have the great Himalayas, we have the great jungles, we have all the rivers, all the beautiful rivers.
The ocean, the Indian Ocean is
the ocean. I think our geographic location, the abundance of natural and human resources, I think makes India an ideal country where this great spiritual thought should have emanated.
So you're saying nature is an integral part?
I think nature definitely. Nature, Prakriti, nature is the most important.
But nature is everywhere, sir.
Nature is everywhere. But as a country, Bharat Varsh, if you see, and then you compare it with any of the country, you will find there are stark differences all the year round. I say that there are beautiful conditions here all the year round. All kind of geographies, all kind of terrains, all kind of weather exist in this country.
Right. So I really enjoyed our conversation today because we covered national security, we covered spirituality, we spoke about how our army needs to be more empowered by integration, jointness and theaterization, focus on Atmanirbharta, defense, and then we came to our strategic culture. That we think we should be more grounded towards, bring our more fundamentals.
In fact, what you are saying about the India strategic culture, I had mentioned somewhere that we have to introspect that which is the dominant culture and what has happened that today we are in this state. I think that's where today it's very important for us as Indians to actually not only study, believe and practice our strategic culture. While the strategic culture exists, but are we studying it? Are we practicing? I think this is a question that we need to ask. And I think this Western dominant culture or thought process of profit as the motive, the crass commercialization has to be replaced by an alternative thought. And if it has to be replaced by an alternative thought, I think if I look around the world, the India's culture and also the India strategic culture, I think shows the way. Sarve bhavantu sukhina, sarve santu niramaya, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschit dukh bhag bhaved. Imagine how beautiful thought, may there be, everyone be happy, everyone be free of illness and, from darkness, leading on to, ma asuto ma sadgamaya, tamso ma jyotirgamaya. Such a beautiful Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam. These are all Aham Brahmasmi, I am the Brahm. Realizing the importance of your own individual person. Resolved here, resolved everywhere. If you internally are resolved, the world is resolved. I think there are beautiful thought process. I would like to state, and I would like to state unequivocally, that today is the time for the Indian strategic culture to be adopted world at large, to usher in peace, prosperity and tranquility.
True, very, very well said, sir. We also spoke about Arthashastra in very basis of Arthashastra. On record, I would like to say the next conversation with you is going to be in-depth Arthashastra.
Definitely. Look forward to that.
To end our conversation today, I would like to pose a question to you, sir. If there was one piece of advice you want to give to the policymakers, change makers, lawmakers, leadership of our country in order to secure our rise, what advice would you give them,
I
sir?
think the most important advice is nation first. I think we have to look at the nation first. Nothing else matters. We have politics, we can do this, we can do that, whatever we may do. But I think if at the back of our mind, whether it is the policymakers, whether it is people at the helm of affairs, I think, or for all of us and every citizen of us, at this point of time, Rashtra Sarvopari, nation first, should be the mantra.
Beautiful, sir. Always a pleasure listening to you, sir, because there's so much wisdom that I get from you, and there's so much learnings, so much insight, so much inspiration. And I'm sure the audience had a lot of takeaway as well, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you for the
Thank
time,
you,
sir.
Shivam.
It's been a pleasure. We at DOAP are working really hard to take this podcast to the next level. Our guests are going to get even better. Our production quality is going to get even better. And hopefully, I'm going to get even better too. Most importantly, we are committed to being consistent and continue to do what we love the most. Until then, keep reimagining